This is Bishop Jackson with a Sliver of Life. I'm dealing with not necessarily a biblical scripture, but I'm dealing with a subject called domestic violence. And I will be doing little tidbits here and there of domestic violence. So we'll just call this little tidbit domestic violence number one. Ladies, how do you know when you get in a relationship with a man whether or not he's potentially a violent man? When I say violent, I mean a man that will potentially go upside your head. I'm going to give you some signs. If you have a man that doesn't respect you enough to talk decent to you without cursing, using the F words, the MFs and the SOBs and that type of thing, that's an indication that this is a violent man. There's violence in his heart. Now, of course, if you're using the same type of language, it doesn't lessen the fact that he's a violent man, but it also adds to the environment that could make him violent. Because if he feels comfortable cussing in front of you, then it's typical that it's because he doesn't respect you. So now, I guess the first thing I want to tell you is if you got a way of communicating that involves using four-letter words and what have you, then you need to curtail that habit, cure that habit within yourself, because it sets the battleground. Because a man who can use that type of language with you and feel comfortable about it can also be violent towards you. The next thing is understand that if a man feels like he has to raise his voice and get in your face and he's stretching his eyes and veins popping out of his neck and his forehead in order to get a point across to you, he's a potentially violent man. The next thing is if he has to touch you in order to communicate with you, if he has to grab you by your wrist, if he has to grab you by your arm, if he has to pull you up close to him, if he has to push or shove you, you have on your hands a violent man. Now, I'm a former police officer, and one of the type of cases that I work quite a bit with domestic violence cases, and usually in domestic violence cases, at least half of them, the woman would want to defend the actions of the guy. And I've seen too many women die that I've worked with. I've seen women stabbed to death. I've seen women shot to death who I tried to help to get away from violent men. And for some reason, the emotional, psychological tie and sometimes the low self-esteem of the woman would always have her going back to the very person who would eventually take her life. So for domestic violence, one, recognizing a violent man. If a man has to curse at you, then he's potentially violent. If he has to get up in your face and scream and yell, veins popping, his eyes are stretched, veins popping out of his neck, it's his forehead, he's potentially violent. The minute he touches you, if he has to grab your wrist, grab your arm, grab your shoulder, pull you up close to him, push you away from him, if he has to break stuff, you have a violent person. I'm not even going to say potentially violent person. I'm going to just cut to the chase and say you have a violent man. Now, you must make up in your mind whether or not you want to live the rest of your life in fear for your life, in fear for your children's life, in fear for the well-being of your whole psyche, your whole spirit. You have to make up in your mind if that's what you want to live with. Because if the man that you're considering being with is that way, he's violent. And if the man that you're with is that way, he's violent. And you already know it. So in my future videos, I will be talking about how to escape this type of man if you've already gotten into it. But for right now, for the ladies who are considering getting in relationships with anybody, if the person is yelling and screaming and cussing at you, eyes stretched, veins popping out the head, veins popping out the neck, got to put their hands on you, got to grab your wrist, your arm, pull you up close, push you away, breaking stuff, punching stuff, you've got a violent man. Leave that joker alone and find you somebody who's sane. And also get yourself some counseling, some self-esteem counseling, because usually behind that is some sort of self-esteem issue with the woman who even wants to consider being in a relationship with a man like that. This is a sliver of life from Bishop Jackson. This is a hot topic. It's a relevant topic, and it's going to save somebody's life. It might even save yours. God bless you. Look forward to Domestic Violence 2. God bless you. If you need any more of these good teachings, or if you need a workshop done, contact me at 407-731-6676. God bless you. See you tomorrow.